Good evening. First and foremost, I want to thank the elders here for this opportunity to present this particular lesson. In 2 Corinthians chapter 2, in verse number 11, the Apostle Paul wrote to the church of Corinth, "Let saints should take advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices." What are Satan's devices that we should not be ignorant of? Last week, I was watching the NBA playoffs. I don't watch the NBA. I don't even get interested until the playoffs come around. But I was watching the NBA playoffs, and I was watching a particular game. Within a 2.5-hour game, 13 ads of sports betting came on during the game. You can't watch any sporting event. I'm a Cub fan. And in the middle of the 5th or 6th inning in the games of the channel that televises the Cub games, they introduce gambling and tell us what the best bet would be as the game is going along. I want to talk about something that is prevalent in our society. And brethren, there are two types of preaching you can do. One is exhortation that edifies and builds up, and the other is that you have to convict and you have to warn. This is a lesson that I think is necessary, that we don't get into a position where this can cause us to be drawn into something that is not just wrong, it is dangerous. I want to talk to you about the 21st vice, the vice of the 21st century. I want to talk to you about gambling. And now you might say, well, the Bible really doesn't talk about this. Oh, yes, it does. It talks about it in principle. No, you may not see the word gamble, but all the principles of what this is clearly explained in the Scriptures. I want to begin by defining what we mean. What does gambling mean? I want you to know gambling falls into the category of worldliness. In 1 John chapter 2, we're told not to love the world, neither the things that are in the world. For if the love of the world is in us, then the love of the Father is not. We need to understand that this subject of gambling falls into some category. And I believe you will see at the end of this lesson that it only falls into the category of worldliness and in one of the wiles of the devil. To play a game for money or property. American Heritage Dictionary says to bet on an uncertain outcome as a contest, to play a game of chance for stakes, to take a risk in hope of gaining an advantage or a benefit. The World Book Encyclopedia says gamblers usually bet money on something else of value at stake for the outcome they predict. When the outcome is settled, the winner collects the loser's stakes. I want you to look at that last sentence. The winner collects the loser's stake. And I want you to notice it's an uncertain outcome. Gambling is a game of chance. It is not risk. It is a game of chance. It's an uncertain event. It is arbitrarily determined, whatever this event is. Number two, the stake, the wager or the bet that is deliberately chanced. And number three, there's a winner and there's a loser. One loses possession wagered while the winner takes it from him. Now, what we're talking about is that you have an event, whether it's a blackjack table, whether it's the lottery, whether we're talking about other things that I'm going to mention in a minute. You have an uncertain event, something that you or I or the person that's in this particular exchange does not know the outcome, has no way of knowing the outcome. And so they stake or they make a wager. and money or of anything of value can be waged. And then there is a winner and there is a loser. The winner takes the winnings from the loser. Now, I want you to keep that in mind as we go along in this study. There's questions that I want to seek to ask, and I want to seek to answer. What constitutes gambling? We're just talking about blackjack tables. We're just talking about the lottery. We're just talking about going and placing a bet at a 21 table. We're talking about sports betting. What constitutes gambling? I think you're going to be surprised at some things that constitute and are defined by gambling. Is it a sin? Well, I'll tell you right up front it's a sin. But I want you to determine. I want you to make sure that you understand how you can arrive whether or not this is a sin. Can we prove it's a sin? Even though the Bible doesn't specifically mention in the Bible, can we condemn it as being sinful? That's a question I'm going to seek to answer. Now, I want you to think about this question. How can betting $2 on a horse, $5 in the lottery be wrong, but losing $1,000 in the stock market is not wrong? How is one right and the other is not simple? We're going to see there's a difference. Can it be justified on the basis of revenue? And man, I know all about that from where I lived for 13 years. I want you to know as I get through this lesson, I am not an expert. I don't want to be an expert. When I lived in Las Vegas, several churches had me come and do series on worldliness, and they wanted me to talk on gambling. They wanted to make me a specialty preacher on the subject. I do not want to. I do not want to be, but I'm telling you something, brethren. This is even much worse than when I lived in Las Vegas. In Las Vegas, it was in the open. It was easy to see. It was all around me. And it was easy to identify, easy to see the dangers. But over time, it has creeped in to be something that is respectable, something that has no danger in it. It's just entertainment, like you would go to a movie, or you would go to a play, or you would go out and have dinner. It's just another form of entertainment. I believe that's a lie. And I want to show you why I believe it's a lie. Now, gambling is not determined by the amount or the degree. The amount of money or the value of a thing risked does not alter Bible principles that are violated. For one to consistently object to another's gambling, he must totally abstain. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, gambling for the compulsive gambler is defined as follows. Any betting or wagering for self or others, whether for money or not, no matter how slight or how insignificant, when the outcome is uncertain or depends upon chance or skill, constitutes gambling. Now, what do I mean by an uncertain event? A chance. Different types of gambling. There's casinos, slot machines, roulette tables, dice and card games, number games. You play for stakes. I was flying from a meeting in Oregon to my home in Vegas some years ago. Had a fella sitting next to me, and he was like a kid in a candy store. He couldn't wait to get on the ground to be able to participate in gambling. And he says to me, he says, "You don't seem to be very excited. You must come here a lot." I said, "Well, I come here quite a bit. I live here." He goes, "This is my lucky day." "You live down there?" "Oh, how fortunate it is for me." He says, "Where is the best place for me, and where do I have the best chance to win?" I said, we were just getting ready to fly over the Strip. I said, "Nowhere." And I could see this fella thinking, nowhere. That must be a new casino. I've never heard of that. I said, "Come here." I said, "Look out over there." I said, you see all those casinos down there? He said, yeah. I said, who bought them? Who pays for them? He said, well, I don't have any idea. I said, well, you're in for a shock because you're going to make payments for them this week. You're going to help pay those casinos off. He goes, what do you mean? I said, you don't think if you win any money that you're winning the money of the casino, do you? The casino takes their money off the top. You're not taking their money. You're taking some poor guy that sat there for 4 hours before you got there, hoping that he'd win, and he's built all that up, and you come along and you hit it, and you think you won it, and you took it from the casino? No, you took it from the poor guy that was before you. He goes, man. He says, you're not a very good spokesman for your city. He says, what do you do down there? I said, I'm a gospel preacher, and he got real silent. But then he asked me a question. He didn't say anything for about a half hour. We're getting ready to land. He goes, can I ask you a question? I said, sure. He says, why do they call slot machines one-armed bandits? I said, think about it. What does somebody do when you're held up? They tell you to put your hands up. So when you go to a slot machine, you put your hands up. Then you pull the lever, and then they take your money. That's why they call slot machines one-armed bandits. He got silent. He went out of the plane. I followed him. When I got out of the terminal, got out of the plane off the runway and was going to the baggage claim, there he was playing one of the slot machines. And I just yelled at him. I said, thank you. They appreciate it. But I don't understand. It just looks harmless. I've seen people get the fever. I've watched it with my own eyes. I've seen it. It's so subtle. It's so easy. Betting on horses and dogs. You can go to dog races. You can go to horse races. And you can put a $2 bet down. Just again, people think it's a form of entertainment. Lotteries. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. Bingo. You know charities have sponsored bingo? We have religions that have bingo on a regular basis. We have churches that have roulette night, have Monte Carlo night. What do you think that's about? That's about gambling. That's sponsored and orchestrated by a religious entity. Bazaars and food booths where you pay to win a prize. Amateur gambling includes poker games for money, betting on the outcome of athletic events, office pools, matching quarters for cokes, or playing marbles for keeps. All that constitutes a form of gambling. Betting on sporting events, football, I never thought I'd see the day where they will legalize sporting events that you can bet on football, baseball, anything, and you can even bet at the stadium while it is going on today. Now, what kind of enticement does that give for a player to throw a series or to throw a game in order for the outcome to benefit him and his bookie? We're opening up Pandora's box. Football pools. They have them during the playoffs. Or office matching squares. When I was in the service, they've had these pools during big games, and they had squares, and you could buy a square for $25. And all the squares would be bought, but there'd only be one winner. Liar's poker. You say, now what in the world is liar's poker? You got a dollar bill in your wallet, I can show you. You bet on the numbers. You tell somebody that in the serial number of the bill, I got 3 5s. He says, I got 3 6s. And you wager, and you say, I'll call you. He has 3 5s, you have nothing. You lose. That's called liar's poker. Very popular in the service. Betting on another's ability, making a wager on someone else, do another one. Casting of lots. That's not gambling. I want you to turn to Acts chapter 1. I had a fellow one time say, well, even the Lord gambled. Let's back up here for a minute. That's just like the fellow I was talking to about social drinking. He said, well, even the Lord made alcoholic wine. I said, you better go back and read the context. You see, I understand why the world uses that kind of understanding, but when it comes from my brethren who are trying to justify things that are not justifiable, that's insulting to the Lord. In Acts 1:26, what are they doing? Judas has died by suicide. They're replacing him. Who chose the 12 disciples? The Lord chose them. You go to Matthew 10, he chose the 12 men. Matthias fell because of transgression. Now look at verse 22 before you get to 26. Beginning from the baptism of John to the day when he was taken up from us. One of these must become a witness with us of his resurrection. Now notice they had qualifications they had to meet. They had to be in and out with them. They had to be privy of the resurrection. They had to be a witness of the resurrection. And they proposed two, Joseph called Barabbas and surnamed Justus, and Matthias. And they prayed and said, "You, O Lord, who knows the hearts of all, show which of these two you have chosen to take part in this ministry and apostleship from which Judas fell by transgression, that he might go to his own place." And they cast lots, and the lots fell on Matthias. Who chose Matthias? There's no chance here. The Lord, what did they pray? Lord, you know the hearts of all men. Choose which one of these two that you have chosen to take the place and be numbered with us. The lot fell where the Lord wanted it to fall. There's no chance in this case. Now, when they were casting lots for his garments, that's different. That's a form of gambling. But this is something that was done that the Lord directed the ending. Taking a risk. I was in California preaching on this, and they didn't like it very much. But one of the fellows said, "Hey, you fish?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "That's gambling." How? I paid for a license. The only one that loses is the fish. And he loses if he takes the bait. But if he doesn't take it, or if he does take it, I'm not robbing him from someone else. I'm not taking it from somewhere else. He said, "What about insurance?" I have life insurance. Why do I have life insurance? I have life insurance in case I die suddenly to protect my family, my wife. Now, if I die and she receives the payment of my life insurance, who did I take it from? I paid premiums the whole time for that policy. If she gets the funds, how is that benefiting at someone else's loss? You know, the only one that lost in that is me, because I died. But that's going to happen eventually. You see, that's risk. That's not chance. There's a difference. You need to look up the word risk and chance. Gambling is not a risk. It's a game of chance. Buying and selling stock is an investment. It's not gambling. But I want to add a caveat here. It could be. It could be. And let me give you a good example of what I'm talking about. A number of years ago, there was a paper that had an editor that began to take money out of the portfolio of the organization that he was working for, and he was investing it to try to make money for the company without telling and asking the company. He lost some investment, so he tried to catch up by doubling on his investments to try to get and recoup his money. Well, lo and behold, they did an audit. And when they did an audit, they found out that he had lost the company $400,000. And there were brethren that were saying that he could not be prosecuted because he's a brother and you can't take a brother to court and you should go. People wrote, there were nasty letters and articles written by men that I respect, that I thought knew better. But you know what? the brethren at the organization, they didn't take him. The state did. And you know why the state did? Because if they didn't tell the state, they would lose their nonprofit status because it's embezzlement. He took the money that did not belong to him. And everybody thought he was a victim. No, he's not a victim. He did something that was criminally, he was responsible. And he was convicted to be such. But there were brethren that hammered the organization because they claimed that they took him to court. No, they didn't take him to court. The state took him to court and found him guilty on 69 different counts. 1 Corinthians 6 does not protect him. That's a sin. But that's how subtle it can be. Buying insurance, that's an honest transaction. Protecting yourself and your family. There's no risk in that. We're all going to die. That's just, you know what that is? That's good stewardship. Should I not take out any and just let my wife fend for herself if something happens to me? No. If I love her, I'm not going to do that. If I'm a good steward, I'm not going to do that. Prizes, when one registers to win a prize and is given away for an advertisement. I'll talk about this in a minute at the end of the lesson. Competition for a prize, not a wagered possession, but won by skill and fair competition. The Olympics. That gambling? How much time do those men and women dedicate to do what they do? Years. Years. They give their time, their effort, in order to win for their country. They're not gambling. They're taking a risk. And they have full investment in it. It's not anybody else's investment. It's their investment. That's not chance. That's a risk. That's not gambling. Oh, I've heard all kinds of cliches for gambling. You can hit the jackpot. Strike it rich. Change your life with one pull. They got a big casino in Las Vegas, and there's a big sign above the biggest slot machine you ever said, and it said, change your life with one pull. How accurate. That was accurate, and they didn't even know it. Get something for nothing. They also have one where there was a woman that was betting, and she was throwing dice on a crab table, and she says, come on, Mommy needs a new pair of shoes. They're making fun of it like it's nothing but entertainment. You know what all this is? One word. Covetousness. Greed. When the epitaph is written on this nation, and it will be, what will be on the first line is the word greed. It's the love of money. What did Paul tell us in 1 Timothy 6? The love of money is the root of all evil. The root, the cause, covetousness, desire for something that does not belong to you. Let me give you some numbers. When I was putting this lesson together, I put this lesson together years ago, but I had to update it. And when I was updating it, it just blew my mind. The Americans wagered almost $120 billion in sports betting in 2023. $120 billion. Let that sink in. $511 billion legally wagered in 2023. In all forms of gambling, $511 billion. 350 million bets placed on the 2024 Super Bowl. You know, in getting back to sports, in between innings of Cub games, they select a person they can put in for this raffle to get their name chosen, and they roll the ball at the end of the inning. They roll the ball to the pitcher's mound. And if the ball makes it to the pitcher's mound and stays, they win $2,000. In the Super Bowl, you could bet who would make the first down, who would be the first touchdown, who will be the first one to make a 1st and 10, which quarterback will be the first one. The bets are just, you can bet anything. Anything. America's casinos, let this sink in. American casinos in 2023 made $66.5 billion. That's after all the light bills paid, all the winners paid, all of it. $66.5 billion. You think you win money from the casino? You win nothing. You're taking it on poor people who sat there and did not win, and somebody goes behind them and takes their money. If that's love, you explain to me how. Over $500 billion a year in the United States in gambling. That's more than the combined expenses of Medicare and Medicaid. Think about that. $500 billion. That's more than the government spends on Medicare and Medicaid. According to the 2023 Gross Annual Wager Report, Americans lost nearly $1 billion in all forms of gambling combined. 100. And you know what's sad about that number? Most of the people who lost it couldn't afford to lose it. But they lost it because they were trying to get rich, trying to hit the jackpot. The National Gambling Impact Study Commission noted that Americans spend more on gambling than recorded music, theme parks. Theme parks, you could rack up some money in a theme park, let me tell you. Video games, spectator sports, and movie tickets combined. You know what that tells me? It's the #1 form of entertainment. That's what that tells me. It used to not be that way. Lotteries. Lotteries are the most played form of legalized gambling in the U.S. In 2023, Americans wagered $17 billion on lotteries. You know what that comes out to? $50.19 for every man and woman that live in this country. In 1963, lotteries were banned in every state. We didn't have a one. Now we got 45 states, and D.C. have lotteries. 48 states have some form of gambling. There's only 2 states you could go to that it's against the law to gamble. One is Hawaii, and that's a great place. I would recommend it highly. In Utah. Every other state has some form of gambling. This a new problem? No, it's not new. The Greeks in Homer's time had knuckle bones from sheep and goats and were marked to serve as dice. A gambling board was discovered in Crete that dates back to 1800 to 1900 BC. Tertullian, he was one of the Christian fathers, he wrote, if you say that you're a Christian when you are a dice player, you say that what you are not, because you are a partner with the world. Tertullian was right. But this was a problem long ago. It's not new, it's just become more sophisticated. Pathological gambling is one of the fastest growing mental health problems in the Western world. Think about that. Caused by greed and by covetousness. The motive for gambling is sinful. It's the love of money. It is coveting something that belongs to someone else. It doesn't make any difference how much it is. What it makes the sin is that the greed that causes it. In 1 Corinthians chapter 6, 9 and 10, Paul said that those people that do such things cannot inherit the kingdom of God. Greed is an eager desire for base gain. Read Ezekiel 22 and verse 12. Covetousness is translated from two Greek words. One means greedy desire to have more. The second literally means loving of money. So covetous is the greed and the desire to have more and the loving of money. They go together in gambling. If winnings were removed from the casinos and the lotteries, would they still prosper? Did you see that the lottery is up to $100 million? You know what people are doing? They're taking out second mortgages on their house to buy $20,000 worth of lottery tickets in order to win that $100 million. I don't know how many times I've stand getting gas and I have to wait because somebody's punching in one of their tickets or buying the tickets, and usually it's people that really can't afford to do it. But they do it because they think it's a way of them being able to get something. Now, I want you to listen very carefully to the next 3 slides, because this is the essence of why gambling is a sin. It violates the principle of legitimate economy. There are 3 legitimate ways of transferring money for goods. The first is the law of labor. Money is paid and earned by one's efforts, physical or mental. Brother Mark is supported in his preaching by the church here. That's a legitimate way of taking care of his family, and it's a legitimate way of making money. There is nothing sinful in that. There is nothing simple. My brother works for UPS. He is paid a wage. He's agreed to a wage, and he works a certain amount of hours, and he's paid, and he gets benefits for doing that. That's honest work. That is the law of labor, and that is a legitimate way of gaining money. And we read this in Ephesians 4. It tells if he's a thief to steal no more, that he might be able to give to those in need. It is a legitimate way. What did the Bible say? If you won't work, neither shall you eat. It's legitimate law of labor. Number 2, law of exchange. A commodity is exchanged for its value in money or goods that can be buy and sell. You buy something on eBay. You buy something at a store. You go there, you buy a dress, you buy a suit, you buy a shirt, you buy a jacket, and you give them money, and they give you an item in return. That's a legitimate way of transferring money. You buy goods. You pay for the goods, and they give them to you. Who's the only one that loses there? No one. I'm not taking it from anybody else. I'm giving it to the business, and they're in it to make money for a profit, and we know that. There's nothing wrong with them seeking to gain from the exchange, because that's why they're in business. That's why they sell the commodity, in order to be able to make money for their families. That's a fair, legitimate way of economy. So you have the law of labor. You have the law of exchange. And now you've got the law of love. Money is given without any expectation or desire for return. It can be a gift. It can be an inheritance. When my father died, he left an estate, and it was divided up between the heirs. What did we do for that? Nothing but be his children. That's all we did. Where did we take it from? We didn't take it from anybody else. We took it from what my father had accumulated and what he had done in his trust in order to take care of his children after his passing. He did that out of love because he loved us. That's a legitimate way of gaining money. So now what we have: law of labor, law of exchange, and the law of love. Those are the only 3 ways legitimately of gaining money in my life. Now, does gambling fit any of those three definitions? No. Gambling is an attempt to obtain the resources of others without providing an equal value in return. Four means of scriptural gain: honest work, the fair exchange, by investment, by a gift. All those, I can take you to the Bible and I can show you the principle that all those are authorized and they are not sinful. They are taking a risk. They are being benefited by either the law of labor, the law of exchange, or the law of love. If any money falls into those three categories, that is a legitimate way of gaining money in our economy. Gambling is consensual theft. For one to win at gambling, others must lose. Do not let this point escape you. When you win in gambling, whether it's the lottery, whether you're at a casino, whether you're making bets in sports betting among the office pool, whatever it is, whatever you're gaining, you took it from somebody else. That's not law of love. That's not law of the labor of exchange. That's not getting it honestly. That's what violates it. That's why it's wrong. Gambling is predicated on the losses, pain and suffering of others. Gambling preys on the desperation of the poor. It just makes them poorer. A Christian is not to take advantage of another. What does Matthew 7:12 say? Doing to others as you would have them doing to you. Do I want you to take my money out of my pocket? Do I want you to do that? No. If you did that, do you really love me? Are you really concerned about me? Now, brethren, do not let this go by you. When you are gambling and when you are betting on a game of chance, somebody's got to lose in order for you to benefit. That is not a Christian character that we want, or what God wants for His children. The uncertain event is arbitrarily determined. The stake is a wager or a bet. It's deliberately chanced, and the winner and loser, one loses a possession wage while the winner takes it away from him. That's where the sin of gambling is. But look at all the good we can do. When I was in Las Vegas, they gave a percentage of the winnings to the education department. And they have got it into states by saying they can benefit. In Indiana, they said it would benefit our roads. Really? They took in billions of dollars. How are our roads? I could take you on some that, man, they've been bad for years. Education. In order to school our children, in order to give them a better education. Do the ends justify the means? Does that make it okay because it's for education, because it's for transportation, because we help these poor districts and we show that how much good it does? In Las Vegas, in the last year I was there, $168 million was given to the education industry. That justify it? Because of the good that it does? You know what that is, brethren? Should we do evil that good may come? I think not. Now, let's talk about something in closing closer to home. Raffle tickets. School needs computers. So they sell raffle tickets in order to raise money to buy computers for school. And somebody will win a television set, and you just buy a ticket. And all the money for the tickets goes for computers goes for the computers of the school, and one person will win a TV Well, where does the money for the TV come? That comes from all the people that paid money in order to help. You know what I do in that case? I give a donation to the school and they can keep the raffle ticket. That's what I do. Because I don't want to set an example, or I don't want to influence something that I preach against, something that I don't want to happen. I'm not going to set an example that goes contrary, hypocritically to what I said. I want to give money to the school to have computers. I want to give money to help them. I'll give it directly to them, and you can keep the raffle ticket. Are we training our children that gambling is a legitimate means of raising money by selling raffle tickets to raise money for social events and for organizations? You know, when I was in Vegas, let me conclude with this. When I was in Vegas, they made a decision that they were going to change their image. Okay, now don't laugh. I'm serious. They were going to change their image. So you know what they did? They started to build theme parks in the basement of the casinos. You know, where you could shoot those water balloons like you do at fairs, or you could take the drag line and you can pay $1 to see if you can see if you can get whatever's in the little box. And they began to do the balloons where you have races against other individuals, and whoever could put the most water in the balloon, they would win a prize, a stuffed animal. And they put these in 5 or 6 casinos, and they started advertising that Vegas is a family getaway, that the adults could go upstairs and play the tables, and the kids could go to the fairs downstairs. And from a business venture, it worked. But you know what they were doing? They were grooming the next generation. Because one day they can get out of the basement and they can move up to the big table. And parents didn't understand what they were doing. They were helping them for the next generation. Brethren, it's subtle. It's easy to fall into this trap. Gambling is not harmless entertainment. It is a dangerous sin. It causes pain, anguish. I have seen marriages destroy over it. I've seen men go to prison over it. When I was in the service, I was given a separate pay because I worked at a top secret site. I was given a 6 months, I was given an allowance for clothing. There was an airman that worked in finance, and he began to figure a way to jungle the books in order to take money by making a fake name in order to give a draw to get that allowance. And you know why he did it? To cover his gambling debts. And what happened is he got caught. And when he got caught, he got put into prison. And he had 3 children, and he had a wife. And all because he had to pay off the debts. When I was in Las Vegas, the elders where I preached in the first place, they told certain people, and you need to get out of here. You know why they needed to move? Because they couldn't go buy a machine without being compelled to put money in it, or to see a table without making a bet. Rather, it draws you in. I saw people get the fever. I had a fellow, let me tell you the story to end my lesson. I was in my office one day, and there was this fellow called me on the phone. It was late in the afternoon, and he's crying uncontrollably. And I tried to say, sir, what can I do? What's your problem? How can I help you? He says, are you the minister there? I said, yes, sir, I am. He says, man, I've done a bad thing. I said, what did you do? He says, I won this trip from my business where I work in Minnesota. And I said, I brought my family out here. They paid for a 4-day trip to Las Vegas. He says, and when I came when I checked in, they gave me a roll of quarters. He said, so I thought harmlessly I'd play the slot machines and put that quarters in the slot machine. And he won. So then he thought, maybe I could win again. So he began to play 21. That's a card game. And he almost lost everything. He was about to sell his tickets to go back home, and his little boy pulled on his pants leg and said, Daddy, we need to go home. And then it hit him, what he had done and what example that he had set for his children. This man was a Christian. This man was a deacon in the church. He had never been in that environment, and it just subtly took him in. He says, I'm leaving here, and I'm never coming back. He says, but you need to pray for me, that God will forgive me for the horrible example that I set for my family. And I said, I'll be glad to pray with you. So I prayed with him, and he's crying, and he thanked me. And he said, Brother Greer, is there anything I can do for you? I said, yes, sir, you can. Go back and tell people what happened to you. In Las Vegas, we had slot machines in grocery stores. We had them in all gas stations. They probably weren't in some churches, but I don't know that for a fact. But I know they had bingo nights regularly. I know they had Monte Carlo night regularly. And they had Super Bowl parties on the night of the Super Bowl instead of meeting together. Brethren, gambling is a greed-driven, predatory vice scientifically designed to squeeze the maximum amount of money possible from every person that gets involved. It is by the very nature an enterprise wholly dependent on victims. The spread of legalized gambling is exacting colossal and social and economical cost in our country. Gambling expansion brings with it increase in crime, in divorce, family disruption, and it creates a multitude of new addicts. Gambling also exploits the poor and the youth. Legitimized gambling is a harmful public policy that should be vigorously opposed on all levels. You know, the industry of the drinking industry and the gambling industry, they begin to show that they have some heart. And in the drinking industry, they begin to say, now, wait till you're 21. Don't start drinking early. We can wait. You can wait. We can wait. Drink responsibly. Make sure you have a designated driver. But go ahead and drink, but make sure you have a designated driver. And you know what they've done in gambling advertisements at the bottom, if you would care to read? It gives you the number of the local Gamblers Anonymous phone number at the bottom of the ad. And they say, and FanDuel, which is a sports app, it says, set limits so you can limit how much you can lose or how much you want to wager so you don't get yourself in too deep. They don't tell you not to gamble. They just try to put parameters on it to protect yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, can a Christian fall prey to this? We live in this world. It's all around us. We need to be warned that we not get this subtle sin and let it consume your life. This sin can destroy lives and has. It can destroy men and women who were good men and women, but got in over their head. And they tried to get even, and they just dug the hole deeper. It's like any other addiction. One more story that actually happened. I preached a series on worldliness in Las Vegas when I was the first preacher to ever preach about gambling in Vegas where I began preaching. They had never heard a lesson from the pulpit. I preached on this lesson. I had a good friend. She was Canadian. She's passed now. But she didn't talk to me for a few weeks. And it went on for about 3 or 4 weeks, and I thought it was a little odd. And then one day she comes to me, says, I need to talk to you. I said, okay, Joan. So we sat down. We were in the building there. I was on the front row like where Mark's at. I said, what's the matter? She says, you know, you preached that lesson on those series of lessons you did on gambling. Said, you angered me because I thought you were wrong. I said, well, Joan, why did you think I was wrong? She said, well, whenever I go to buy groceries, like I said, they're in the supermarkets. When you get done buying your groceries, there's a little area that has slot machines, and they have a change girl there. In case you don't know what that is, that somebody can take your paper money and turn it into cash so you can play in the slot machine. And she used to play all of her change from her groceries. She would just go and play the change. That's all she would play. And she would play that every time she went to the grocery store. And she thought it was nothing more than entertainment. And she thought it's ridiculous. I'm not becoming an addict. I'm not losing. I can afford it. It doesn't affect me. But one of the things that I said in the lesson, I said, this destroys your influence. When people see you doing this particular sin, it destroys your influence. And that angered her more than anything I said. So while she was studying this out for herself, for 6 weeks she didn't go, and she just walked past the slot machine. She didn't participate. She didn't take her change. She just avoided it while she was studying it out. The last week, she was going out the door, and the change girl saw her. She said, Joan, come here. And she went over there, and she says, oh, you've been in Canada? She's a Canadian. She thought she had been in Canada for a vacation. Says, you've been in Canada? You've been sick, John? Anything wrong with John? No. Says, well, I haven't seen you. I begin to worry about what happened. Thought maybe something happened to you. She says, no. She said, where I go to church at, the preacher there preached a series on gambling, and I've been studying it, and I purposely stayed away from it while I was studying it. The girl looked at her right in the eye and said, you're a Christian? Hit her right between the eyes. Because you know why? Because that's something a Christian wouldn't be involved in. Had a fellow when I preached on social drinking said, hey, I can go in the bar after work, hot day, sit down over a beer, and I can talk about Christ. I said, when you walk out of that door, they're laughing you to scorn. Because they know if you are what you claim to be, you have no business being in that bar. How can the world see it and we can't? Because it's our culture. Culture can influence you. It can lead you down the wrong path. You need to be warned. Brethren, gambling is not legalized entertainment. It is greed, it is covetousness, and to practice it, it will cost you your soul. And it doesn't matter how much the wager is, doesn't matter that you can afford to lose it. None of that matters. What does it do to your influence? And what does it say for your love for others if you willingly take their money in order for you to gain a benefit? I hope this lesson has been helpful. I hope that we begin to open our eyes to the things that are around us and not allow it to influence us to go down a road that could destroy our lives and could destroy our soul for all eternity. Brethren, I don't think people wake up one day and say, you know, I think I'm going to become an alcoholic today. I think I'm going to become a gambler today. I think I'm going to start taking drugs today. It doesn't happen that way. It is a process. It is a road that you begin to go down, and it slowly but slowly, it takes control. And then it is a hard thing to be able to overcome it. In 1960, there were 30 Gamblers Anonymous chapters. Today, there's over 1,500 in every state. It is a problem, and we need to make sure that it does not harm us or our family. Remember, we are to be examples in the life that we live and the things that we do. Thank you for listening. I hope that this has been helpful. I want to again thank the elders for the opportunity to present this. I believe that it's something that's just going to continue to grow, and it's something that we must be on guard for, that we do not get sucked into a life that would lead us in the opposite direction that we want to go. We have not talked about salvation tonight, the love of God. All of that's true, and God loves you, and we love you. And if you're here and you need to surrender your life to the Lord, or you need to make things right, that you've not lived the kind of life that you should as His child, if you need to do anything to make your life right with God, we're here to help you. And if we can do so, we bid you to come forward as we